Imagine standing on a road that ends in snow and spruce, with a steel gate in front of you and Russia just a few steps beyond. The wind tastes like salt and ice. Somewhere out on the Barents Sea, trawlers ride the gray swell. To the west, Norway. To the east, the Kola Peninsula and the powerful Northern Fleet. Up here, at the top of the world, two neighbors share fish, storms, and a long memory. Today, you'll hear 15 Norway-Russia facts in the Arctic you probably didn't know. Each one a small window into a place where rivalry and reliance live side by side. Before we dive in, a quick compass check. The high north is more than snow and polar bears. It's the Barents Sea, the islands of Svalbard, Norway's Finnmark, and Russia's Murmansk region. It's where shipping lanes meet ice charts, where indigenous traditions cross modern borders, and where search and rescue can be the difference between life and loss. This is a region that's resource-rich and rule-heavy, and it rewards anyone who looks closer. Ready? Let's go. Fact 1. Norway's only road border with Russia is a single gateway called Storskog on the Norwegian side and Borisglebski on the Russian side. It sits far above the Arctic Circle and for years was a surprisingly practical crossing for people who lived up here. Truckers, students, shoppers, and families. Life at a polar border is both ordinary and surreal. A convenience store receipt might show 3 languages, a winter morning commute might include northern lights, and every trip is watched by cameras, customs, and the kind of paperwork that keeps order when the sun doesn't rise. Fact 2. Svalbard has rules unlike anywhere else. Norway has sovereignty, but the Svalbard Treaty guarantees non-discriminatory economic access to citizens of signatory countries. It's also demilitarized, which means you won't find bases or garrisons like on mainland Norway. That mix, Norwegian law plus open economic rights, creates constant diplomatic puzzles. Who can mine? Who can build? Who can research? The answers are legal, not loud, and they shape everything from coal spurs to science stations. If you think Arctic politics are all bravado, Svalbard reminds you they're often paperwork and patience. Fact 3. For decades, a wedge of the Barents Sea was a cartographic headache, nicknamed the Gray Zone. That changed with a maritime boundary deal in 2010 that split a vast area almost down the middle. The agreement clarified who manages what, from seabed mapping to potential energy exploration. But most immediately, it mattered to people who actually go to sea, fishermen who needed to know which Coast Guard would knock on the hull and where gear rules changed with the GPS coordinates. Fact 4. The Barents is home to the Northeast Arctic cod, one of the world's most valuable wild fish stocks, and it's co-managed by Norway and Russia. Each year, scientists from both countries assess the stock, and a joint commission sets a total quota, divides it, and lays out inspections and seasonal closures. Most of this work is spreadsheets, not spotlights, but the result is rare in global fisheries. A long-lived, heavily harvested stock that still rebounds when given room. It's not without drama. Quota debates can be tense, but it's a reminder that biology and diplomacy meet on the trawl deck. Fact 5. Kirkenes, a Norwegian town just a short drive from the border, is closer to Murmansk than to Oslo. Walk its streets and you can feel layers. Wartime scars, fishing fortunes, Russian-language shop signs, festivals that welcomed neighbors from the east, and recent years that reshaped routines and relationships. Border places collect contradictions. You can order Arctic king crab in a cozy cafe, and then drive past a sign pointing to a checkpoint that most people will never see. For locals, international relations isn't an abstract headline. It's whether the hockey team can still host that cross-border game. Fact 6. In the Arctic, search and rescue isn't a courtesy, it's a lifeline. Distances are massive, light can vanish for months, and water kills quickly. That's why the region relies on coordinated rescue zones, shared protocols, and sometimes joint exercises. A mayday in the Barents can trigger helicopters, cutters, and radio traffic in multiple languages. When the sea turns mean, rules and rivalries step aside for the oldest law of all: help the mariner in distress. The politics may throb in the background, but when the alarm sounds, the playbook is practical. Find them, stabilize them, get them home. Fact 7. Just across the line in Russia sits the Kola Peninsula, home to the Northern Fleet and some of the most capable submarines and ice-breaking ships on Earth. This is one reason Norway runs one of the most vigilant radiation monitoring programs anywhere. It's not hysteria. It's housekeeping. Sensors, drills, emergency plans, quiet work that builds muscle memory. Living next to nuclear infrastructure means you watch, you measure, and you plan. Most days, nothing happens. That's the point. Fact 8. The Cold War left behind more than slogans, it left technical problems too. Across the Barents region, projects have worked to secure nuclear waste, improve storage sites, and retire old hazards. It's unglamorous, painstaking, and sometimes slow, but it's also the sort of cooperation that proves its worth in silence. A safer storage cask doesn't make a headline, yet it lowers risk for fishermen, for coastal villages, and for anyone who cares about a clean Arctic. In a region where people argue loudly about maps, engineers have spent years quietly fixing metal and concrete. Fact 9. Long before diplomats learned the phrase Barents cooperation, the Pomor trade bound northern Norwegians and Russian seafarers together. For centuries, Norwegian fish, especially stockfish, moved east, and Russian grain and goods moved west. Ports buzzed, words blended, and families made a living from a rhythm older than passports. Even today, names, recipes, and stories carry that memory. The Arctic is often painted as empty. It isn't. It's full of footsteps, keel lines, and handshakes that lasted through many winters. Fact 10. For people living close to the line, a local border traffic regime once made short visits easier. A permit allowed residents on both sides to cross for shopping, sports events, or to see relatives without going through the same process as someone flying in from far away. It made life feel less like a geopolitical map and more like a shared neighborhood with a fence. Border communities don't forget how practical cross-border life can be. The idea persists in memories, calendars, and 100 small stories about picking up spare parts or catching a bus to a match. Fact 11. The Russian footprint on Svalbard is real and visible, especially in Barentsburg, a coal mining settlement that feels like a time capsule and a working town at once. Murals, Cyrillic signs, a ballet hall, and the everyday grind of logistics in sub-zero air. Everything has to come by sea or by air. There's also the ghost town of Pyramiden, with its stern statues and empty windows, now a magnet for visitors who come to witness a rare, Arctic freeze-frame of Soviet-era architecture. On Svalbard, culture doesn't arrive softly. It arrives by ship. Fact 12. The Sámi people span Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Russia, and their reindeer herding traditions predate the borders that cut across the tundra. In the high north, identity and livelihood move with the seasons. Modern permits, national rules, and climate pressure. Ice crusts that block winter grazing or early thaws that complicate migration frame ancient knowledge into today's reality. When you listen to Sámi voices, you hear something vital. That the Arctic is not a frontier to be opened, but a homeland already full of roots, duties, and rights. Fact 13. Coast guards from Norway and Russia spend a lot of time doing the unglamorous work of keeping the rules at sea, checking gear, verifying catches, and protecting closed areas. Every so often, a boarding goes sideways, a quota dispute heats up, or a trawler pushes its luck. Cooler heads usually prevail because both sides know what's at stake. Safety, sustainability, and the deterrence of freeloaders who would strip a shared resource. Call it fish war light, loud enough to matter, quiet enough to avoid throwing decades of cooperation overboard. Fact 14. In the Arctic, weather is a shared enemy and information is a shared shield. Mariners depend on ice charts, gale warnings, and satellite data that tell them whether a route will be open or deadly. A captain navigating gray daylight and blowing snow doesn't care where the barometer was manufactured. They care whether the forecast will keep the crew alive. The Arctic teaches humility. No flag can command a storm to stop, and no border can hold back a moving flow. Fact 15. Tomorrow's maps will test today's rules. As sea ice retreats, the promise of faster passages tempts shippers, insurers, and port planners. But every mile saved on a globe can be a mile gambled at sea. Search and rescue coverage, environmental safeguards, pilotage, ice-class hulls, these are not footnotes. Norway and Russia both look at new traffic and see opportunity and risk. New terminals, new fees, new choke points, and a need to make sure a rush for shortcuts doesn't become a long list of regrets. Let's pause and connect the dots. The high north isn't a frozen blank space. It's a living neighborhood where a demilitarized treaty sits next to a nuclear fleet. where a single road border once connected shoppers and students, and where cod science can keep the peace better than rhetoric. It's where local people remember the feel of the old Pomor trade, where Sámi herders read the snow the way sailors read waves, and where Coast Guards, meteorologists, and search and rescue crews do daily work that most of us never see. And it is a place where the future is arriving quickly, in the form of thinner ice, busier routes, and harder choices. If you want one takeaway, make it this. The Arctic is a test of maturity. It asks countries to think past the next news cycle, and it asks neighbors to keep talking even when the conversation is hard. Managing fish stocks is dull compared to viral headlines, but it feeds people and families. Securing old nuclear waste isn't cinematic, but it means the next generation can fish without fear. A permit that lets border residents visit a friend might not look like strategy, but it builds trust that no summit can buy. You've just heard 15 facts that unlock a different way of seeing the top of the world. The Storskog Gate, Svalbard's legal maze, the end of the gray zone, cod cooperation, Kirkenes' double identity, Arctic search and rescue, Kola's nuclear reality, Cold War cleanup, the Pomor memory, local border life, Russian footprints on Svalbard, Sámi continuity across borders, Barents patrols that keep the rules, shared weather intelligence, and the new, uncertain future of Arctic routes. Together, they tell a story that's not simple, not static, and not finished. So here's my question for you. Which fact surprised you most? Was it the idea of a demilitarized archipelago with open economic rights? The quiet success of a shared fisheries commission? The way old trade ties still echo in names and festivals? Or the reality that in a blizzard, politics yields to rescue? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them. And if you want more deep dives into Nordic history, borderland culture, and Arctic geopolitics in clear, simple language, hit subscribe and share this video with a friend who still thinks the Arctic is just ice and emptiness. Thanks for listening. Stay curious, stay kind, and I'll meet you next time at another overlooked crossroads of the North.